Good afternoon. It's Friday the 13th of February 2026, just after 1 o'clock, and welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. My co-host in studio today, Brian Gerrish. Welcome to the programme, Brian.
Pleasure to be here.
And we'll be joined today once again by Basil Valentine. Now, later in the programme, Basil's going to be reporting on the removal of access to court lists and records by the Starmer government, the building fight over contracts with Palantir. Brian's going to be reporting on a convicted child abuser, and we'll have the latest on what Common Purpose has been up to. And I'll be taking a first look at the Munich Security Conference, which begins today, and I'll have an update on online safety. But we're going to begin today with Palestine Action, because the question of whether or not they should have been prescribed has been settled, or has it, Basil?
Well, for the time being, the ban remains in place, Brian, although just this morning, Dame Victoria Sharp, sitting with Mr. Justice Swift and Mrs. Justice Stein, said that Palestine Action is an organisation that promotes its political cause through criminality and encouragement of criminality. A very small number of its actions have amounted to terrorist action within the Terrorism Act of 2000. I'm not quite sure what they are, but that proportion was still disproportionate. So the ban, the prescription of Palestine Action, has been declared unlawful, but remains in place pending an appeal and further legal arguments. Unsurprisingly, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has rejected the court's findings and intends to launch an appeal at the Court of Appeal in order to keep the ban in place. Obviously, it's presented an extraordinary set of circumstances, with supporters of Palestine Action declaring their support for the organisation once again outside the Old Bailey. Lots of cheering, as you can imagine, and police standing around rather nonplussed, not quite knowing what to do. It's a sort of, legal grey area now. Of course, Palestine Action are jubilant. We were banned because Palestine Action's disruption of Israel's largest weapons manufacturer, Elbit Systems, cost the corporation millions of pounds in profits and lost out on multi-billion-pound contracts. We've used the same tactics as direct organisations throughout history, including anti-war groups Keir Starmer himself defended in court. And the government acknowledged in these legal proceedings that this ban was based on property damage, not violence against people. This is Huda Amori speaking outside the High Court this morning. Banning Palestine Action was always about appeasing pro-Israel lobby groups and weapons manufacturers, and nothing to do with terrorism. Metropolitan Police have released a statement warning that prescription remains in place, and so showing support for Palestine Action is still a criminal offence. But they've said that they're going to focus on gathering evidence rather than making more arrests at this time. It's a complete nonsense, really. The Assistant Commissioner, Lawrence Taylor, the National Head of Counter-Terrorism Policing, said officers will enforce the ban pragmatically and proportionally. Policing's role is to enforce the law and to do so without fear or favour, as the public would expect. Prescription is, and always has been, a matter for government. Following today's judgment, the Home Secretary has stated she intends to lodge an appeal. The court has ordered that the prescription order remains in force until further order of the court. We recognise this is an unusual set of circumstances, and until further order by the court, counter-terrorism policing will approach the whole question of enforcement pragmatically and proportionally. That seems to be the code word, and we'll continue to work with forces across the country. So, a huge victory, really, for civil liberties, apart from anything else. It was always nonsense to categorise Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation, and the court acknowledged that. So, but quite what the Home Secretary hopes to achieve at the Court of Appeal, or what new evidence or arguments are going to be presented, particularly when 6 defendants at Woolwich Crown Court last week were cleared of the key charge of aggravated burglary, which itself doesn't cross the threshold into terrorism. I'm not quite sure it's a bloody nose for the government. February the 13th, proving unlucky for the Home Secretary, Mike.
Absolutely, Basil. Just very, very briefly then, the question, I suppose, in my mind is what happens with the convictions of the people that have, were arrested at the various protests in recent months, do you think?
Well, that's a very good question. Amnesty International and the leader of the Green Party, Zach Palantir, are amongst those, saying that all charges should immediately be dropped. People are due in court next week. It's a grey area. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen, because this is the first time any such ban on a prescribed organisation has been overturned in court. So we're in uncharted territory.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on then to an ex-Labour councillor.
Well, it's more bad news for Labour, isn't it? But first of all, I must say that I'm about to report on a gentleman called Liron Velleman, and I want to make it clear that he's been released on bail, so has not been convicted, and court proceedings effectively still in process. So we're making a very measured report. Some of the information in the public domain at the moment. So we'll kick off with the BBC's report. So here we are. How do they headline it? Labour ex-councillor admits child sex offences. And I want to bring this up on screen because a warning appears in this story, which it says this story contains details that some may find distressing. And I'm slightly flummoxed because, OK, there is some pretty unpleasant things that have taken place, but it seems to me extraordinary that the BBC felt the need to put a specific warning for the reader on this, but perhaps our audience will make up their own mind. If we just bring that one back on screen, let's go through a little bit more on what we need to cover. And so this is part of the BBC's report. So this man sent a video of his penis to basically a 13-year-old girl. I believe that she was 13. And he was attempting clearly to groom her. What he didn't know was he was falling into a sting operation by the police. And he's eventually caught for this. Now, the BBC here talks quite a bit about what happened and about the court case. It does admit that he's a member of the Jewish Labour movement. He's freed on bail, but he can't mix with somebody under the age of 18 without supervision from another adult, and he's going to be sentenced at Harrow Crown Court later. But what the BBC doesn't tell their readers is that he was formerly a director of the New North London Synagogue. And we think this is important because effectively it starts to build up a little bit of a more detail about this gentleman. Now, just remember that no sentencing has taken place, but we are dealing here with the reporting of the case. So if we bring this on screen, this is the Jewish Labour movement. And what we can see instantly is that we've got another very powerful Jewish lobbying group, this time in and alongside the Labour Party itself. And this man was originally involved with this. But the BBC failed to report on something else, and that was that Mr. Velleman was a former Hope Not Hate political organiser. Now, other news sources have picked up on this gentleman, and we've got MSN here saying ex-London Labour councillor admits child abuse, child sex offences after Met sting. And we now know that he was an organiser for Hope Not Hate, but the BBC clearly doesn't want to talk about that. But why is his former connection with Hope Not Hate so important and in the public interest? Now, remember, you're getting this information from the UK column, not from the BBC. And in turn, we want to thank UK column members who picked up, had sharp eyes to pick up some of the information I'm now going to bring on screen. So remember what this gentleman has allegedly done. Now let's go to the online safety bill. And this is the Hansard report here. So it's talking about debated on Thursday, the 26th of May, 2022. And initially under that banner headline is a list of the committee members under the chairmanship of Sir Roger Gale. But there were also a number of witnesses, and we've brought those up on screen. I know it's a bit small, but let's bring in the big arrow, because here we have no less but Liron Velleman himself as a political organizer for Hope Not Hate, witnessing the online safety bill. You couldn't make this up, Mike. It's really quite extraordinary. And I just want to highlight as well, no suggestion of any wrongdoing, of course, but William Moy, the chief executive of Full Fact, was also present as a witness. And this is the organisation which puts itself forward as being the know-all, essentially, as to what's happening. So we wanted to bring this up, that a man who's been accused of some really serious things was actually a witness to online safety. I mean, it's
giving evidence to the inquiry to decide how this legislation, which the government has framed in the language of protecting children, and they're having these types of people involved as witnesses.
Yeah, now we could say that this comes down to vetting again, because the government is using people to give opinions and influence and lobby on very serious law. And it appears that they're failing. So there's a lot to come out about this case, but at the moment, of course, we can't report in too much detail because of the situation of the case itself. Now, we do also want to say that Jewish media has reported on this man, and I think it's important to highlight this. So this is the Jewish Chronicle, ex-Labour councillor who sent explicit messages to police officer he believed was a 13-year-old girl released on bail. So Jewish press did pick up on this, but it's only the UK column and some sharp-eyed members that have picked up on this connection through to Hope Not Hate and the online safety bill.
So then related, I suppose, in a sense, is the Epstein investigation. And Keir Starmer has decided to fire the head of the civil service and cabinet secretary. Now, of course, I'm only speaking about one person who held both of those roles, and that's Sir Chris Wormald, who can be seen on screen here speaking to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee last November. Wormald was given both these roles in December 2024, and he is the victim that Starmer has chosen to try to stave off, the latest victim, I should say, that Starmer has tried to stave off Peter Mandelson's criticism of Peter Mandelson's appointment as ambassador to the United States. Now, the fact that Wormald was only appointed to the role a few days before Starmer announced Mandelson's appointment, so he could have had very little impact or played really almost no significant part in the decision to appoint Mandelson. So his interim replacements then are going to be Catherine Little, who's Permanent Secretary at the Cabinet Office, Dame Antonia Romeo, who's Permanent Secretary at the Home Office, and James Bowler, who's Permanent Secretary at the Treasury. And they're going to be there doing his job until the replacement is appointed, and that will be shortly. And we should remember, of course, he's the third person to be kicked out in the last few days, following Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's Chief of Staff, and also Tim Allen, his Director of Communications. It's not going so well for Starmer at the moment.
No, of course, because the party's rotten from the inside, which also applies, in my opinion, to the Conservative Party. But these dynamic events have caused this rot to come to the surface, and now they're just going to try and cover up by getting rid of people and bringing in somebody else who will keep the lid on the state of play inside the Labour Party.
Absolutely. Now, we're delighted to see that Patrick Henningsen has managed to join us live. Patrick, welcome to the programme. Now, you've sent us a report from Iran, from Tehran, and we're going to show that in a second. But before we do, I'd just be interested to get your brief thoughts on the deprescription of Palestine Action.
Are we going to have some?
No, yeah, we can't. Unfortunately, we can't hear you, Patrick. Look, what we'll do is we'll show the report. We'll show the report, the first part of it anyway, and maybe you can try reconnecting, and let's see if we succeed in being able to hear you. So let's show this to start this off.
Yeah, this is a good introduction.
This week we're reporting from on the ground in the capital of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Tehran, and it's been a quite incredible journey to get here. A lot of obstacles were put in our way. We managed to arrive here on Wednesday, and as luck would have it, this was the National Independence Day, or the National Rally Day for Iran, and we managed to, after making it through customs, an hour and a half, somehow managed to get through traffic into the city. The traffic was so incredible because there were literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people coming into the city center to join this sort of national display of solidarity for the state, for the government, for the leadership, and really also in opposition of the threats being waged by the United States currently under the Trump administration, threatening to start a war at any moment. It could happen. This is a very real and present concern here, no doubt. But we managed to park the car and walk. A lot of people parked, literally turned a major freeway artery into the city into literally a giant parking lot. And we walked in for the duration, as did many other tens of thousands of people on the road that we took. And we made it to the latter part of this rally. It started at 8 a.m. and finished around 12:31. And we got a chance to experience something that's extraordinary. By anyone's estimation, probably 2 million people attended this rally. So the scenes were incredible. We took a few shortcuts from this, and I'll show a few of those in a moment here. So there's hundreds of thousands of people, I don't know, maybe a million are out here. We're coming up to the main square, but just the sheer mass of Iranians out today is unbelievable. A major event. So what was incredible about this is that we've been told in the Western media by our politicians in the West that there were, all of these anti-quote regime protests going on, and the country is completely divided. People are afraid to come out in the streets for fear of being, attacked by the regime and whatnot. So that's what we've been told. We've been fed a steady diet of this, what can only be described as Western propaganda, in how they characterize what's going on in Iran. And what you saw was this incredible unity, national unity. There weren't just, I would say socially conservative Iranians out, more religious people in this country. Certainly that would have been the majority of the people out, but there were what you might term moderates, secular people, all united under this umbrella, if you will, of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and celebrating the anniversary of the revolution. So the revolutionary government is alive and well in this country, and it has a massive constituency, and you can really see that for your own eyes here. Certainly this was one of the reasons why I came on this trip, and there's a lot of reasons why I shouldn't have come. In terms of the threat of war, it's certainly not a pleasant situation if that was to kick off, but I needed to see for myself what was happening here, and I needed to be able to convey that to our audience at the UK column, of course, but also at 21st Century Wire, and really more broadly to our Western audience and our readership and our viewers.
Well, Mike, I've got to say, really fantastic report from Patrick. It's brilliant that he managed to get to Tehran. And of course, Patrick taking huge risk because as a Westerner, he's in a very big city. And although he's clearly describing everything is stable.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
He's been walking out on the street. So well done to Patrick Henningsen. And also we'd like to say it's absolutely fantastic that the UK column, with Patrick's help, have been able to get another in-country report out. So this is excellent.
So we're going to show another excerpt from that in a second. But Patrick, just give us the latest that you're seeing over there at the moment.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you now, yes.
That's brilliant. The internet here is very patchy because of the security situation. Everything is very much on high alert right now. Obviously, people here are concerned about an imminent attack from the United States. But despite all that, life goes on in Tehran. This is a megatropolis in terms of major cities. So it's people are getting about with their daily life. There's no the rioters are gone, and normal life is happening. It's very safe, Tehran, at night, during the day, etc. But the internet's always going to be an issue here with the current security situation. So I've managed to get a window of internet here at the moment. Now, in terms of like what we just saw, the clip that you showed, it was really a display of solidarity nationally. This was all around the country, so all the major cities. Millions of people came out, probably collectively about 20 to 24 million people in total in the different cities and municipalities around the country. So that's a very different picture than what we've been fed over the last couple of weeks and months about the division, in supposed division in the country. Actually, there's quite a lot of resilience. Now, we were also able to see a lot of the military hardware on the parade. Some of those clips are in my report in terms of the drones and the missiles. So that is a big sort of source of national pride here, is their homegrown defense industry. Everything is basically native. We got a chance to see their missile defense systems earlier today, as well as the hypersonic missiles, as well as the drone technology and U.S. drones that they've downed. We've got a chance to go and listen to their experts tell us about how they captured a U.S. drone and downed it by capturing its signal communication and landing it in Iran, the most advanced U.S. drone. That was a couple of years ago, obviously, and then the downing of the Global Hawk, the MQ-4 Global Hawk drone. So we got a chance to see that and hear the stories of how all that took place. So from that point of view, this has been absolutely fascinating. And as an American, I was able to see the old U.S. embassy with the famous hostage crisis, which is now a museum. So it's called the Den of Espionage. I'm translating into English. So it's pretty incredible, having seen that story growing up as a child. That was a big part of the news event growing up in America, and then to actually go there, everything is perfectly preserved. The SCIF, the secure communications, the encryption rooms, everything. So I got an opportunity to actually see all that from a historic point of view, and obviously what I've witnessed on the streets and meeting people. A lot of the women are unveiled, so that stereotype that women have to cover their hair here is completely false. So there's just so many different things that you could only know really by seeing it for yourself if you're from a Western country, because all of this is more or less blocked off to our media. These reports exist, but you won't see them on our mainstream media. And so people are getting a distorted view of Iran. And I think that's also to manufacture consent, to make it okay to, trigger a war against them. So, and I hope that, what I'm reporting can help, deconstruct some of these and debunk some of these stereotypes and a lot of the propaganda that we get fed in the West. That's the reason I came. I needed to see for myself. That's why I'm here. It was not easy to get here. It was definitely not easy to, the schedule has been grueling. And we've been doing a lot of media coverage with the various local medias, want to talk to the international journalists that are here, of which I am one of many. But these aren't necessarily mainstream journalists. A few of the mainstream reports I saw, they were absolutely unbelievable.
I did want to ask you about that, Patrick, because the BBC, because you were obviously that first segment of your report was talking about what was happening on Wednesday this week. The BBC's answer to that was that there were massive chants of "Kill Khamenei," and so I just wanted to ask you to address that. Yeah, absolutely.
What, from this week?
Yes.
Absolutely. Balderdash. No way. No way. Just the opposite. So a record number of people came out for the National Rally Day, more than previous years. So people are absolutely rallying around the government by the millions. I think they estimated 2 million people came out for the National Day March in Tehran. Very, very pro. I mean, it's all about supporting the leader. It's all about supporting the military, because the country, people here en masse know they're under attack. Even the secularists are basically in solidarity with conservative and religious conservative Iranians. Everybody is on point with basically opposing U.S. war and an Israeli war, which is being waged against this country. So if the BBC actually reported that about the national rally, that's pretty much insane. That's the only way I can say it. It's just like Orwellian.
Yeah.
Patrick, I just want to stress for our audience that you're there live in Tehran at the moment, which is really excellent. You, in your reports, we're going to be showing the full report that you've given, recorded report that you've given the column. So people watching the news today and UK column extra, which we'll make public, will be able to see Patrick's full report. One of the things you've stressed is how calm things are at the moment, but you've also been speaking to people about the terrible turbulence and trouble and violence there was. So we're recognizing with compassion that clearly people were hurt in Iran, but that has now clearly stabilized. And you've stressed here is this very big city and country, and it's reverted very quickly to a peaceful state. I don't know whether you'd like to say anything more on that.
Well, to add to that, Brian, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because just in the last 24 hours, I have met two families who have lost, in one case, two of their sons, and in another case, a family member that were attacked by and shot by the so-called peaceful protesters, of which there is ample evidence. And we even met with the chief of the main district police here yesterday to show us pretty gruesome evidence of what happened to police officers. So hundreds of law enforcement officers and security officers were killed, and these were people largely that were unarmed. And it's not the same as in America, where the police all carry firearms. Not the case here. So because it's a different type of civil defense, the rioters and agent provocateurs are able to take advantage of that by using the crowd as a human shield and firing from behind people in the streets. But weapons caches were recovered. I mean, it's a huge scandal here. And so having actually met the families of the victims who were killed by these so-called, peaceful protesters, and there were peaceful protests. There were legitimate economic protests from the merchant class. This was in December, late December, and the beginning of January, and that the violence drafted off the back of that. And we have plenty of admissions from Israeli and U.S. intelligence that they were involved. Admissions, from head officials. So there's no question that was the case. So, but to really see, there's going to be no tear-jerking BBC videos about the families who lost their children to violence perpetrated by people backed by the West or backed by Israel. You're not going to get those reports. And, so you get it on the media here. It's not that these reports don't exist. They exist here, but they're not filtering back through to the Western media. They don't care, because that destroys the narrative, basically. And this is a narrative that the West are trying to spin about something that happened, that they say happened here, that 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40. Someone told me 70,000 as I was getting attacked online a couple of days ago. So I replied back to them, why not round it up to 100,000? Protesters were, quote, massacred by the so-called, the quote regime. It's ridiculous. This is, we have never seen a propaganda wave designed to demonize a country that's so outrageous as we're seeing out. In October 7th, post-October 7th, the type of propaganda, atrocity propaganda Israel was pushing, about 40 beheaded babies, that was bad. But the scale of the operation against Iran is unprecedented. And I believe the amount of money spent on influencers in the West pushing these scripted lies is unprecedented. We're talking in the millions, tens of millions, maybe more, was spent to create this campaign to soften up Iran for a military strike. That's exactly, and there's no question in my mind that that's what this is.
Yeah, Patrick, thank you very much for that. And the tragedy of this is, of course, people have been killed and severely injured, lives destroyed, both sides of it. Within the wider public community and within the state system itself. It's terrible.
Okay, well, look, Patrick, we need to move on, but I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us today. That has been absolutely fantastic. We are going to show the rest of Patrick's report in extra, and we are going to make today's extra available to everybody, not just to members, so everybody will get to see the full report. So thank you very much, Patrick, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, see you then.
Thank you. Okay, let's come back to the UK then, and to the situation with the courts in the UK and access to court records and court lists. Basil, the media. Sorry, let me just see here. Sorry, Brian, you start this off because you got sent this a couple of days.
In the flow. Obviously, that was a live report, so. It's taken a little bit of time out of the news, but we're delighted to do that. But great effort by Patrick. I just wanted to give credit to UK column members, because there's a lot of sharp-eyed members sending us information. And this was a little report that I received a couple of days ago. Now, it is from the Times newspaper, but somebody picked it up on their phone and said, Brian, I think this is really important. So I want to say thanks to that person who was UK column member, Paul J. But he was very, very upset to read about this deletion of the UK's largest court reporting archive. So I just wanted to give that credit as an introduction, Mike.
Absolutely. So Basil, take us through this story.
The Court Desk, it's called, and it's a relatively recent introduction. It's an archive of magistrate and county court cases that enabled accredited journalists to find out what's going on in the court system more easily than sifting through hundreds of pieces of paperwork, which often only give the name of the defendant and very scarce details, which means basically that without Court Desk, it's extremely difficult for journalists to find out what's going on, and very easy for cases to sort of disappear without any meaningful reporting. Now, I'm indebted to Nat Goodlad, a reporter up in the northwest of England, for a local newspaper, because local newspapers are one of the few outlets in the sort of mainstream corporate media where people do still have some independence. And he was writing in the Lancashire Telegraph, pointing out that the decision to delete the entire archive, as well as, of course, therefore not maintain or update it, is being presented as an administrative tidying up exercise purely for data protection reasons. But those data protection reasons have not actually been meaningfully explained in any way. But it is, in fact, a decision that makes the criminal courts much less visible, much less accountable, and harder to scrutinize, and should worry anyone who cares about open justice. For those of us who report from court regularly, he said, Court Desk became part of the daily machinery of doing the job properly. Court Desk was never a replacement for court lists, phone calls, or sitting through hearings, but it was a way of making sense of a system that increasingly withholds detail until the last possible moment. So Court Desk filled gaps, allowing reporters to prepare, prioritize, and ensure that hearings of genuine public interest were not missed simply because the information wasn't there in time. And that this matters because open justice does not mean very much if cases can be heard without meaningful notice to the press. Courts may be open in theory, but in practice, the public relies on journalists to be present. If reporters do not know what's happening or cannot reasonably prepare for it, then scrutiny falls away. The data Court Desk gathered was uncomfortable reading for the justice system. Millions of hearings being advanced without notice, listings that were accurate on only a tiny fraction of sitting days. Courts routinely hearing cases the media had no way of knowing about. And that information obviously did not damage open justice, but it demonstrated where it was already failing. Now, unsurprisingly, there's been pushback against this from, amongst others, the Libertarian Conservative former Cabinet Minister David Davis. And there are perhaps even deeper, darker reasons why this is happening. I've seen speculation online that it's in order to cover up Prime Minister Keir Starmer's own failings when Director of Public Prosecutions, or indeed multiple other cases that are now going to disappear into the annals of history unless journalists are prepared to spend hundreds of hours going through court filings.
Basil, thank you for that. Now, we just do have a little bit of what David Davis had to say here, so let's just have a listen to that, and then we'll talk about it in 1 second.
Open justice is an absolute foundation stone of the British justice system. Knowing when somebody's going to be tried and what they're going to be tried for is fundamental. And yet the government, the Department of Justice, Ministry of Justice, is now ordering a company that does just that, tell the newspapers what's going on in the courts, to shut down and delete their database, a huge database, massively important to the newspapers. 1,500 inquiries in recent times depending on this database. It won't save much money and it'll undermine transparency of justice in Great Britain. Open justice.
Oh, come on. Right, sorry about that. We're having a few technical problems today.
bugs.
But look, what I want to make is, because you already mentioned this, Basil, the fact that Court Desk was only launched in April 2024. So it's only been going for less than 2 years. Now, there's a number of points about this. First of all, as far as I'm concerned, it could be argued, that, as some people have been on social media, that this is an attempt to cover something up by Keir Starmer. What this does is it brings us back to the bad old days of pre 2 years ago, where people had to go to individual courts to see the court lists, and the court lists were often not correct and they weren't published on time and this kind of thing. But the point is that this platform, although it was much more convenient for journalists, it was only convenient for journalists. And members of the public couldn't get access to this. So we couldn't see what court cases were coming up if we wanted to attend them in person, for example. And so my question, really, just to finish this off, is what actual justice is supposed to be seen to be done? What actual transparency is there with respect to the court system, when in fact for us as the public, it becomes very, very difficult to follow what's going on. And we rely therefore on the editorial policies of the newspapers to decide what they think are the important cases.
Well, yeah, absolutely, Mike. And really, rather than deleting the archive in its entirety and doing away with this, it should be made available to the general public. Or at least made available to any journalist that seeks accreditation to access to it. So this is 100% going in the wrong direction. I mean, it's extraordinary that a so-called Labour government are pressing ahead with this. Well, as David Davis says, this is going to save a few pennies. The data protection reasons that the government's claiming that it's doing it for, because you see, obviously, if information about all these cases are available to a wide number of journalists, then some information may come into the public domain, which should not. But that should be dealt with on an individual case-by-case basis, not with doing away with the whole thing as a blanket ban.
Yes, thank you.
Basil, I'd agree with that. I'd just challenge David Davis talking about open justice when in this country, closed courts with no press and no jury can take people's children away. And when the parents attempt to defend themselves against perjury and false reports, the papers will not deal with that information because it's protected under family court secrecy rules. And I can tell our audience that the Telegraph itself backed out of a high-profile case around two twins that were taken from a mother because they said, well, we can't touch the evidence that the mother has to protect herself because it's held under secrecy rules. So to stand up and say, sorry. Go ahead.
Not just in the family courts. I believe I'm right in saying that during the judicial review into Palestine Action, the barrister representing the government was presenting evidence which neither the defendant, Huda Hamori, or her legal team were allowed to be present in courts to listen to, that instead a special counsel was appointed to represent their interests. But that special counsel was not allowed to tell them what had been said. So, it's not just in the family courts. This creeping secrecy, together with, of course, the move to do away with juries for vast number of cases, means that decisions like the one made today by the High Court to overturn the ban on Palestine Action are absolutely crucial. Judicial reviews, absolutely crucial to maintaining the checks and balances in our constitution.
Yeah,
thank you for that, Basil.
A lot more to be discussed on this.
Absolutely, we'll do that in extra. But just to finish this off, just to let you know, there is a petition entitled "Make all court and tribunal transcripts available free of charge." I would say that needs to be expanded to the court lists as well. But anyway, that's there if anybody wants to get involved with that. Now, let's just say, if you like what we do here at the UK Column, we do need your ongoing financial support. Please do help us if you possibly can by becoming a member or making a financial donation. You can find out how to do that by clicking on the button on the front page of the UK Column website. But if you can't support us financially, please do share our material, because that helps us defeat the censorship regime, which we might get a chance to talk to later on in the programme. Tonight on the Weekly Banter, Charles and I are speaking to Germ about our recent trip to China, why we went, who we saw when we were there. So join us for that if you can. And lots of people want to know, so hopefully there'll be a good viewership for that. Just very briefly, my discussion with Matt Errett that went out yesterday at 1 p.m. Is up on the website. If you haven't seen it, the comments in the forums have been very positive, so please do have a look at that. And an article on Edgar Allan Poe, fascinating historical figure, wrote lots, as everybody will appreciate, but also heavily involved in US politics and so on. So have a look at that if you can. And Brian, a couple of stories from members then.
Yes, I just want to continue this theme of our members doing some really good work in the background. We get a huge number of emails. We can't respond to them all, but we do pay attention to as much of the information that comes in as possible. This was an article which a concerned member of the UK Column said, "Are you aware this is happening?" So the headline here from the Gazette and Herald said the public asked if up to 96 firefighters should now be made redundant. This is further collapse of local authority provision for the public. So it's Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Authority starts the discussion on the possible closure of 8 fire stations, which would ultimately lead to 96 firefighters becoming redundant. I also popped this one up on screen, and we were hearing a little bit about this some time ago in relation to Windsor, but basically the local councillors got fed up with the fact that every time the royalty decide to eat in large numbers, fine food and wine, etc., they end up with a bill. And it appears that at the moment, the local council is saying it will not support any more state visits because basically the costs of the royalty hosting Donald Trump at Windsor Castle last year were not reimbursed. And I think that's fair enough. If we put a picture up of what fine dining looks like, I think they've got most of the Amazon rainforest on the table. I wonder they can actually see each other. But I'm going to bring this up because apparently among the important guests at the French president's state visit were Dame Christine Scott Thomas, who's an actress, Mick Jagger, and Sir Elton John. And my goodness, we've got to put all of that cost onto the public. I think it's outrageous. Meanwhile, another heads up from our audience was that we've now got the royal family on altruistic work. This was Camilla visiting I think it's Somerset Police, Avon and Somerset Police. And I think this is absolutely about reputation management.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on then to Munich, and the 62nd Munich Security Conference begins today, and it's going to run until Sunday at the Hotel Bayerischer Hof in Munich. Now, Marco Rubio is going to attend, and for the first time in a while, AfD is going to be there because they were considered persona non grata. Keir Starmer will be there, maybe, assuming he's still Prime Minister by the end of today. Also, Yvette Cooper and Priti Patel will be there representing the UK regime and its opposition. And Nazanin Boniadi from Amnesty International UK will also be there. Now, she is also, by the way, a board member of the Burmand Center for Human Rights in Iran. So Ukraine, Iran, the military-industrial complex, Russia, AI, populism, they're all on the agenda. Ben's going to have more about what's happening at MSC on Monday's programme, if anything newsworthy comes out of it. The question which is often asked about this event is it just the poor relations of the World Economic Forum? And the answer is, I suppose, that it depends, because at times of geopolitical strife, like we're going through it at the moment, it definitely comes to the fore. It's less corporate than the World Economic Forum, and more directly tied to the sort of the crises that might be happening at a particular moment. So we're going to watch closely over the weekend, and we'll keep you posted if anything interesting happens. Now, all this is happening at the same time that there's significant shifts in the leadership at NATO. And on Tuesday, they announced an agreement on what they describe as a redistribution of senior command positions. So that's going to see a British officer take over Joint Forces Command Norfolk, which is responsible for the Atlantic and the Arctic. An Italian officer taking charge of Joint Forces Command Naples. And both these positions were previously occupied by US officers. Poland and Germany are now going to share the Joint Force Command Brunsum, responsible for NATO's eastern flank on a rotational basis, and that was previously held by a German officer alone. And they say that as a result, all three force commands which lead at the operational level in crisis and conflict will be led by Europeans. And at the same time, the United States is going to lead all three theatre component commands, and that's for the first time taking up responsibility for Allied Marine Command, and they maintain leadership of Allied Land Command and Allied Air Command. And the report says the agreement is part of a shift to more fairly shared responsibility within NATO, with European allies taking greater leadership roles in NATO's command structure, while also making clear the US commitment to NATO command and control, including maintaining the role of Supreme Allied Commander Europe. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, more European control will mean more confusion and disaster, really, because the Europeans have never, ever, and that is while NATO was doing its Cold War job, been capable of operating together in a fully coherent way. And one of it is language. You may speak English, but colloquial terms and military terms vary across the nation states, and a few words spoken at the wrong time or the wrong words used can cause trouble. So Europeans under the European Union banner, this is not going to be good, because everybody's going to want to be the top dog. And my prediction is you're just going to see more and more infighting. The thing about the Americans is their overwhelming military might meant that somebody was there to make the ultimate decision and the rest had to fall in line. Now you're going to see, sorry, this is a bit crude, it's going to be a dog's breakfast of a military operation. So I think it's going to be fascinating.
Okay, well, in the meantime, you got a bit of a preview of it there, so we'll just bring it on screen. In the meantime, the Ministry of Defence here in the UK has signed a contract with a defence company called Blacktree for the supply of AI-capable equipment, including radios, headsets, display tablets, cables, batteries, pouches and antennas. And the contract is worth £86 million. It's known as Dismounted Data System. And it's going to provide what they claim precise information on surroundings and intelligence, meaning increased clarity in who are enemies and who are comrades. With all soldiers linked to the same network through this equipment, DDS will also be tailored to different scenarios, allowing troops to receive either or a combination of voice or visual data, maximizing effectiveness across all battlefield situations. And they say that the new systems have already been tested by soldiers on deployment in Estonia. The testing on NATO's eastern flank, they said, saw the visual information element, allowing soldiers to be less distracted by loud noises on the battlefield. I asked Charles about this because obviously he's as qualified as it comes on this, and he said, talking it up as a British-based SME is misleading. It looks as though Blacktree is just an outlet for trellisware in the United States. This exposes some very obvious vulnerabilities. As with all things tech, especially digital, they're all well and good until they break, and then you're left with nothing. All of this is predicated on the idea that they are not susceptible to jamming and electronic warfare attack, which is all well and good until they are. It further reduces the need for situational awareness from commanders and anyone on the ground, as they will become reliant on what they're fed by systems like this. There should be questions about how it harmonizes with other existing equipment, as well as what the fallback is should it fail. Also, while it might work in Estonia, would it work in Iran, for example? There are many examples of comms kit in particular performing very differently according to terrain and topography. I think the central danger is you wouldn't know if it had been compromised, and such a situation would lead to disaster. This sort of stuff is pushed as is. Surely just a matter of time before the baddies find a way to defeat it. I think those are very astute comments.
Very astute comments. There's one other thing I will add to it is the more that battlefield control is wrapped up in this sort of IT, AI blanket, the more people who are distant from the battlefield think they can micromanage fighting on the battlefield itself. So people back thousands of miles away in warm offices will start to think they can make the actual decisions that are going to affect the real fighting at ground level. And that comes down to toughness and gut instinct about how to conduct that warfare in a local area. So I think Charles is absolutely right to be concerned.
Okay, so Brian, let's bring us up to date with what Common Purpose has been up to.
Yes, it's very interesting, isn't it, that after a lot of work by the UK column many years ago to expose what this pernicious political charity, that's what I've always called it, what it was up to, Common Purpose started to do less in UK and to do more outside the country, in particular in India. But we have been paying attention to what it's been doing, and we thought the time was right to talk about it again, particularly thanks to UK column member Kate. Now, Kate sent me an email saying that Common Purpose and the British Council have partnered to run leadership programs for the Pakistani diaspora community in the UK. The aim is to build the capacity of Pakistani diaspora leaders from different backgrounds, sectors and generations to have a greater impact both in Pakistan and in the diaspora community in the UK. Now, let's qualify this, because UK column has been saying for many, many years that immigration and migrants have been used as a malicious political policy to help break down nation states. And Common Purpose, in choosing its future leaders, is now going to select people who are living outside their own country. They probably hold two sets of values, one for UK, one for Pakistan, and Common Purpose, an unelected body, a charity, albeit highly politically based, is now going to train these people. So if we just bring this up on screen, and I'm going to say to our audience, please go to Common Purpose's website and have a look. It says here we are bringing together leaders from across the many different diaspora of the world. Now, they're not just ultimately going to go for Pakistanis. This is going to be to people who've migrated worldwide across the world, and Common Purpose is one of the many non-government organisations which is clearly trying to capture these people, reframe them in Common Purpose's own political agenda, and then use these people to take control of the political systems in the nation state. Now, how can I reinforce this for our audience? Well, thanks again to Kate. She sent me 2 other links. She said that this smacks of the EU Soros neighbourhood project of the EU and NATO expansion migration. So this lady is spot on. And if we have a look at what she was referring to, here's the British Council, a scoping study for a leadership programme for Pakistan diaspora leaders in the UK. And the British Council has commissioned Common Purpose to conduct a scoping study to establish the potential for leadership programmes for these people in the UK, and to produce a report for the British Council based on the findings of this study. So if you're local and you're thinking, well, if I get elected as a local councillor, I'm going to be able to make a difference in my community. No. In the future, Common Purpose is going to make sure that it is defining who's going to come in as a leader. This is another one of the links that Kate pointed out for us. And this is the Balkan Forum Inter-Diaspora Roundtable discussion on the Balkan region. It's back from February 2020 in Berlin. And I think our viewers will be interested that this is all being done with the financial support from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, of course, with absolutely no accountability. And I'll add this bit here. We've got the European Commission, and if the image seems a little bit strange, this is what you see on screen. So if you're saying, my goodness, I can't read this, please blame the European Commission and not the UK column. But this is talking about Union Global Diaspora Facility. So this is going worldwide. There's no question of it. Like I say, once again, the corruption is what you see on the website. That's not a fault of the UK column. But if we bring in some of the people driving this, we don't really know who these people are, what their backgrounds are, what their loyalty is. Have they been vetted at all? No. Have they been elected? No. But these people are going to bring in the future leaders. If I may, Basil, just give you opportunity to comment on this. It is utterly blatant that the agenda now is to break down nation states across Western Europe, including the US itself, in order to get this globalist.
Did you mean the UK?
Well, US and UK might, because this is being done in the US, albeit with different organisations and names, but the tactics are the same. This is to destroy the nation state, and they are now going to use people who've been displaced from their own country in order to take up a role where they can be steered away from pro-national policies. I don't know how you'd reply to that, Basil.
Well, this has been an agenda for arguably 50 years, Brian, and it touches on a very sensitive subject, which is the relationship between the people that live in the country, the history, and the land, and whether or not any connection between people and land is valid in terms of authenticating connection, ultimately nationality, sense of belonging. And that's what is being not just eroded, but completely smashed to pieces. So, in other words, there was arguments about this recently, of course, with Jim Ratcliffe's comments, and indeed Matt Goodwin as well, a Reform candidate up in Manchester. Look, what I'm going to say now is arguably rather controversial, but if a dog has puppies in a stable, it doesn't mean that they become ponies and horses. It's as simple as that. Is there any qualification to being English or British or French, for that matter, or any other nationality, more than simply being born or naturalized in that country? Because certainly any attempt to define Englishness, Britishness, or any other nationality as requiring more than simply being born in that country or becoming a naturalized citizen thereof is automatically decried as some form of ultra-nationalism, ethno-nationalism, or racism. So that's a conversation that hasn't been had. It's one of the ones that's been swept under the carpet for the last 30 years. I don't want to pronounce on it from any sort of ethical or moral judgment myself, simply that there needs to be an honest conversation around that subject, and we haven't had it yet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that, Basil. Now, look, we're well over time, but I do just want to finish off today with the Palantir story, because I think this is very important. So Basil, first of all, I'm just going to bring this on screen because this is Transparency International. And the Corruption Perceptions Index 2025, UK corruption concerns risk becoming new normal. Business as usual, not enough to turn corner, as UK receives lowest ever score in Transparency International's influential annual Corruption Perceptions Index. And they go on to say, results published today show the UK score has fallen to 70, down from 71 last year. This marks the UK's lowest point since the index underwent a major revamp in 2012. The UK remains 20th in the global ranking for the third consecutive year, a significant decline from its top 10 position back in 2017. I believe it was 7th at that point. And then they quote here their chief executive, Daniel Bruce, is saying, for 3 years running, the UK has been stuck in 20th place in the Corruption Perceptions Index. With a score that continues to deteriorate, this persistent decline is not a temporary blip. It risks becoming a defining feature of our political culture. I'm going to say, Basil, to start this off, I think that horse is well and truly bolted.
Yes, and it's worth pointing out that this was produced before the Mandelson scandal broke, to the extent that it now has, resulting in the resignation of 3 senior members of the government and possibly the Prime Minister himself. But the Palantir business rolls on and on. There were pointed questions in the House of Commons this week from both sides about Palantir's involvement, particularly in the NHS. On Wednesday night, Palantir celebrated its winning of the £240 million Ministry of Defence contract with a huge, lavish party at the BAFTA building in the West End of London. Now, that was picketed, and BAFTA employees, certainly some of them, were horrified that a company so intimately entwined with the Trump administration and indeed with surveillance operations in Gaza should be holding a party in their building. But there's more to it than that with Palantir, because not only were these contracts handed out after Peter Mandelson took Keir Starmer to an off-the-record meeting with Peter Thiel at Palantir's headquarters in Washington, but also Jeffrey Epstein himself was apparently an early key funder of Palantir when it was in the startup stage. Now, we don't know where Epstein got his money from. That remains opaque. Certainly some of it came from Les Wexner. Did it also come from child trafficking? In which case, if Palantir is built on the proceeds of child trafficking, then what possible role could it have in any contract, in any aspect of British public life, let alone the Ministry of Defence and the Department of Health?
This is crucially important, Basil, because at the end of the day, the tentacles of the Epstein scandal go right through politics, but also through corporate life as well. And as you say, if contracts are being given to companies that are somehow benefiting from his activity, this needs to be fully investigated and the necessary steps taken.
And some politicians are calling for a full investigation into the way these contracts were awarded, or indeed that they should just be cancelled immediately. The government are claiming that no British company could do what Palantir is going to do for the Ministry of Defence, and they're clinging to the life raft at the moment. But I think there's a lot more to come on this story. The pressure has to be kept up. The government want the whole thing to just go away. Week or two's time, everybody moves on, news cycle moves on. But no, we have to keep the pressure up on this one. Palantir was awarded the MOD contract once more without any competition, without any tender. There were no other bidders.
Indeed, but also they have access to call-up contracts as well, which is so it's not just the MOD contract we're talking about here.
No, there's the Department of Health one as well, and very slow take-up among GPs to cooperate with that, and indeed with health trusts. It may become completely unworkable, the more so now that we know more and more about Palantir and its relationship with Mandelson and Epstein. So if the government can't force GPs and local health trusts to work with the Palantir system, then they'll simply have to abandon it. It doesn't do anything that other aspects of NHS data collection and sharing don't already do as well, apparently.
Yes. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for that, Basil, and thank you for your contribution today, and Brian as well. We've got to leave it there for now. And a massive thanks to Patrick for joining us from Tehran. So we will be back in a few minutes on the live stream. If you're a UK Column member, stick around for UK Column News Extra. If you're not a member, then please consider joining, and then you can join us for Extra as well. But don't forget Germ tonight, and we'll be back at 1 p.m. on Monday, as usual, for another news program. Have a great weekend. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.